Welcome to the Squaredrop Camper Build Part 5, The Galley. I'm Rick, and you're watching Life in Color. I had a really hard time making this video. There's so many projects that are on the go that I didn't know what to focus on. I tried to do a collage of everything, and finally I just settled into making the video of using the 80/20 to design out and build the galley. Most of this footage was recorded in late July and August. The reason for building with 80/20 was because I had a couple of tables that were made from it, and I was able to scrap them and get all the parts that I thought I would need. What I didn't know was that the sizes were metric and not imperial. So we ended up with 40 millimeter, 30 millimeter, and in the end we had to use 1 inch to complete the project. It's a real hodgepodge of bits and pieces, and we'll take you through how we did it. For those of you that don't know what 80/20 is, it's extruded aluminum, and it is very strong. It's really fun to play with, and there's lots of different options you can do in fastening it together, and we'll take you through how we did that. The blade that we use to cut this aluminum is a Diablo blade, and it's designed specifically to cut 80/20, and I got it at Home Depot. We cut very slowly with it. We typically give it a light spray with WD-40 or penetrating oil, whatever we have actually. We used the 40 millimeter 80/20 to build the main counter space for the Squaredrop. You'll notice to the right hand side that there's a rectangular box built already, and what that box is going to be for is for the fridge, and the fridge will sit on a slide inside of that box. To the left of the fridge slide is going to be the spot for the sink, and Jen measured that and did a great job of putting together those big pieces. We were tapping by hand, and we did have to do some tapping by hand later on because I did kill the drill that's in this video, and being cheap I actually waited till they went back on sale before I bought another one. They're great drills. I've got no complaint with them. I just abused the daylights out of that poor thing for a couple of months. Here I'm just drilling the tap, or sinking the tap, backing it up and pushing it back down again until I've sunk it all the way to the depth that I need to tap in the next bolt. There's a couple of ways of putting together the 80/20, and one of the ways is tapping, and the other way is making a bracket or using a bracket. When I scrapped the tables, I took all of the nuts and bolts and washers and brackets that were there on those tables and threw them into a bucket. This is kind of the dregs of it after we'd built a fair bit with it, but we did get quite a bit from those old tables, so that was a big bonus. That saved us actually a lot of money. To attach the two pieces together, you're going to need to drill a hole if there's not one available. And to do that, we use a step drill bit. They work great. You just basically let them sink in until you know that you've got an opening on the far side of the aluminum, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. The reason we use a step drill bit is because we have to get the bolt head through the sides of the 80/20, and by using the step drill bit, that allows us to do that. Then all you have to do is drop a bolt into the end and tighten it down into the area that you tapped on the end of the 80/20. We had bolts that had Allen keys on the end of them, or Allen hex on them, and they're incredibly hard on your hands. I would have preferred something else, but use what you got. There's lots of pros and there's lots of cons to using 80/20. One of the cons is the cost of the bits and pieces. The nuts and bolts, they're hugely expensive, and the brackets are even worse. So what we did was we bought some aluminum L bracket from Home Depot, and then we proceeded to test it and see what we could make out of it. So here you can see me cutting a piece of it. What I'm doing is I've already drilled it, and then we're going to test it to see how it fits with the 30 millimeter and with the 1 inch. For the 40 millimeter, we were able to use what we had, and again tapping the ends. Once we knew we had something we could work with, we then went into mass production mode and built a whole pile of brackets, and you'll see that. Aluminum's a very soft metal, and you can use a little belt sander. This is like a $69 one. You can just polish off any of the burrs and anything that makes it, potentially able to cut you or get you a sliver and make yourself a decent bracket. Now would be a great time to say don't forget to give us a like, and if you enjoy the content of the video, subscribe. Here Jen's just making the brackets and she's just buzzing them out, and then she's tapping them with a punch, and I am drilling them with a small drill bit, and then I go back later and drill them with a larger drill bit. Polish them up with the sander, and we've got ourselves a couple $100 in brackets. I mentioned earlier that I had a really hard time making this fifth video. There's so many projects that we have going on right now on this build, and it really got confusing as to what would be important, what people are looking for, what they wanted to see, and I really struggled on that. I knew the galley would be interesting because of the 80-20, but I really wasn't sure about the trim on the inside, or the water heater, or the plumbing. All that stuff is just really, it's confusing to know what you want to see. So I really appreciate any comments. If you can let me know what you want to see, that would help a ton. And I hope that this video is not too long, so I'm trying to basically settle it down and give you the details and show you exactly what the steps were, but not make it too boring. So it's a really fine line in these how-to videos to make an entertaining video that actually people want to watch. So one of the cool things about 80-20 is it's got slots down the insides of the track, and what you do is you drop a nut inside of the track and slide it down to the area that you want the bracket to be held, and then you bolt the bracket to the 80-20, and you do the opposite with the other side. So it works really well. It does leave a bracket protruding, which for the most part isn't really a problem. It just comes down to being a problem if you need it to be like smooth or clean in that area. So the box that Jen's building right now is going to be the electrical box, so some brackets aren't going to be an issue. They'll actually look great there. Did I mention that I really like the fact, or one of the benefits of 80-20 is that you can actually build a piece and then move it out and have it waiting to go back in when it's convenient for you to put it back in. So we were able to build the cabinet with the fridge slide and for the sink, and then actually put it back in once we completed the separation wall and the battery box and the closet on the other side. I bought a beautiful piece of stainless steel and had them use a brake and do the folds on it so that we would have a splash guard and a fold over onto the 80-20, and then it was time to cut out the spot for the sink and cut out the spot for the electric outlet and for the switch to turn off the lights. While I was doing that, Jen was building out the partition wall, closet, and electrical box for the inside of the trailer that goes behind the counter. She used the new 1-inch that we purchased, and I think we spent, I don't know, maybe $150 on that material. We did buy a few nuts and bolts at that time. I think they were $50. So a couple $100 more in parts, and Jen really came along. Here you can see she's drilling with the step drill bit and tapping, mainly because I broke the drill, by hand. And I did jump in and help her out a few times with tapping because it's really hard on your wrists, and we did break a couple of taps because it's very tough to do, and you're also in a rush and you push really hard. Once the shelf was assembled, Jen had to put all the nuts and bolts in and the brackets, and then she actually had to disassemble the whole unit and put in the actual metal or aluminum shelving. And we used alupanel, which is what we used on the sides of the trailers. In the past, I've built a few shelves and this and that with wood, and I found it a lot easier to deal with than the 80-20. The 80-20 is deadly accurate, and you have to be very precise to make it work. I am super impressed with the end result of what we've come up with, and I'm incredibly proud. And I think it's going to be more durable, it's going to be more rigid, it's going to be not subject to rotting, repairable if we do damage it, so a ton of benefits. Once the cabinet was assembled, we moved it into position and bolted it into place. We plan on putting doors on the front of the cabinet. I purchased half-inch good two sides pre-finished plywood from a local shop that provides really good plywood, and I'm really happy with the product. It looks great. Here you can see Jen tracing out the switch that is going to run the water pump, the light that goes over the cabinet, and the light that goes under the cabinet. That'll be LED strip lighting. Did I mention that this also has a USB charger port and a cigarette adapter? Beside that, we were installing a regular 120 volt safety plug household socket. I had never had any experience working with stainless steel before and was very, very surprised at how strong that metal actually is. To cut out the sink, or the hole for the sink, I used a angle grinder and a thin cutting blade, and that worked fine. It cut through it quite well. I used the same for cutting out the light switch and for the 120 volt plug. But when it came time to cutting out the holes to put the tap through the top of the unit, I bought a hole saw. I burned that hole saw out and got nowhere getting through that stainless steel. I had to regroup, and I tried a regular bit, and then I broke down and tried a step bit, and that's finally in the end what I used. It was not the right thing, so anybody, if you've got knowledge that you could pass along, please put it in a comment to let me know what I should have used. Once I had used the step bit to get through the steel, I ended up having to go back to Home Depot and pick up a die grinder bit to get the holes enlarged to the size that would work to get the tap bottoms through. I was cutting on top of the table saw, and I put a piece of foam down to not scratch the material, and of course that foam just lit up like a Christmas tree. So lots of smoke, lots of flame, but it instantly goes out and not a big deal. Then I used the flapper disc to clean up the edges on the stainless steel. Again, I'm amazed at how strong that metal really is. When I go to Home Depot and buy a tool for work, like the grinder bits, I tend to buy two at a time because I think, oh, you know what, I'll just be safe, I'm never going to need it. But I was blown away at how hard it was on those little metal bits. Here's some pictures that I took around mid-August of the build, and I thought you'd be interested to see the sinks in and the switches are in. So yeah, very, very, very pleased. Thank you very much for watching.